Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the second panel of Conscious Revolution platform that Exit has launched this June on its 20th birthday. As every positive change in society occurs as a result of individual evolution of consciousness, Conscious Revolution platform is bringing together some of the leading global speakers, artists, scientists, entrepreneurs, and activists with the aim of discussing possible directions of individual and collective development of humanity. Today, we will draw attention to the importance of environmental protection on a global level, which is really threatened by human negligence. The next decade will be very important for the state of our environment. As we are all aware, our planet is warming up, and reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have shown that if we are to keep the warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is considered a safe zone for both humans and other living beings on the planet, we really need to start cutting emissions fast. And actions that we take in the next 10 years will really set the course for what's going to happen to our planet until the end of this century. That's why we really need to step up our game now, put more ambitious targets in place, put more ambitious policies in place, and that will help us achieve this goal. Today with us, we have some people which are really at the forefront of this battle and are both individually and within their organizations doing a lot to help to get us on this path. With us today are Anna Schoemakers, Executive Director of Greenpeace Netherlands, which is one of the most influential environmental organizations in the world, dedicated to a green and peaceful planet. She joined Greenpeace in 2016, holds a master's degree in political science, and has a Finnish Dutch background. So when she's not dedicated to Greenpeace, you'll find her taking care of her tiny forest in the eastern part of the Netherlands and running around Amsterdam, where she lives with her family, her 3 kids, and her husband. Welcome, Anna. Thank you very much for joining us today. Next, we have Hans Bruyninckx. He's the Executive Director of European Environment Agency, whose task is to provide sound and independent information on the environment with the aim to support sustainable development by helping to achieve significant and measurable improvement in Europe's environment. Dr. Bruyninckx has a PhD on the topic of international environmental politics. He has been teaching at universities in both United States and Europe. And until his appointment at the EEA, he was a professor of environmental politics and the director at HIVA Research Institute in Belgium. He has conducted and managed many policy-oriented research over the past 20 years. Welcome, Hans. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today.
Pleasure to be here.
And last but certainly not least, with us is Sophia Kianni, an 18-year-old American climate and environmental activist and the national strategist for Fridays for Future, an international movement of school students started by Greta Thunberg. She is also the founder and executive director of a global nonprofit organization called Climate Cardinals, which is doing really important work of translating climate change materials to many languages. Sophia is also an international spokesperson for Extinction Rebellion, as well as a national partnership coordinator for This Is Zero Hour. And just a few days ago as well, it was announced that she will be a part of the UN's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, working directly with Secretary General Antonio Guterres. She is a writer specializing in media and strategy. Welcome, Sophia. Thank you for joining us this early in the morning, since you are calling us from the United States. And at the end, I will be your host. My name is Nemanja Milovic. I'm the founder and editor of the leading climate change website in Serbia called Klima 101. We are covering the latest research policy and new technologies which are helping us fight climate change. And I'm also working with the Serbian clean tech startup ecosystem, helping Serbian startups reach the market and, make a real impact on the world and the environment. So with this official start over, let us begin with the first topic that I would like to delve into. In general, when it comes to environmental protection and climate change, negative news mostly prevail in the media. All the time we hear about which species are close to the extinction. We hear about habitats that are being destroyed, about natural disasters which are occurring because of climate change. But at the same time, I feel that, as a society in recent years, we have taken some important steps to solve these problems. And there is reason for hope in all of this. So at the beginning, I would like Anna, I would like to ask you if you could share with us what achievements are you especially proud of that you have personally or within Greenpeace have managed to do in the past couple of years and that give you hope for the future?
Yes, thank you for inviting Greenpeace. And if I may, I will share with you two examples of which I'm extremely proud. And one is something about nature, and the other one about the CO2 pollution, so to say. And let me start with half year ago. I am extremely proud that we had a protestival. So we had a protest festival at Schiphol, at the big airport Schiphol in Amsterdam. And there we went with a lot of Greenpeace activists, with Extinction Rebellion activists, and we just made a festival there in the heart of the polluter to make very clear and to demand that also Schiphol and the whole of the aviation industry, that they take responsibility, for climate change, so that they make climate ambitions, that they live up to the Paris Agreement, because they don't. And we were there all day, and the tension got higher and higher because Schiphol felt very uncomfortable having so many very, how do you say, excited and energized people there, all wanting and demanding the same. Like, hey, Schiphol, CO2 is not something you can just pollute for free, but you have to take responsibility so that we all can travel safe and responsible. That was one. And we're still on it, of course. The other one is about the Amazon reef. We are always, as Greenpeace worldwide, researching where are they drilling for oil, on land and in the sea. And then we figured out that there were plans for drilling oil there where the Amazon River comes into the sea. And then we went there with our ships. Greenpeace has 3 beautiful ships going over the sea, doing the actions. And then we discovered a new coral reef together with National Geographic, because we take on board researchers and media. And then we found out that at the spot where they wanted to drill for oil, that there was is a coral reef. And coral reefs are very important for our healthy oceans. So then we started a campaign. We started to bring the news into the world. And then we started to work together with the Environmental Agency of Brazil. And we succeeded. There was a huge success that the Environmental Agency of Brazil itself said to 3 big oil companies, no, you're not allowed to drill there. We're going to save this Amazon reef. And that's really something very hopeful, that sometimes you can just cooperate all together and do something for nature.
Yeah, those are some really great stories, which really, show that when people can organize themselves, when they have a specific goal that they want to achieve, they can do it. Everything is possible. You can do everything. You just need to have like a plan and a concrete thing that you want to do. It's really good to hear that you have managed to do that. Hans, I would like to go over to you right now. You have a great overview of all policies, initiatives, and general trends when it comes to the environment. How do you see previous years? Have there been significant advancements? And what would you also say was EEA's biggest achievement in the last couple of years?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for being here. And yes, indeed, we have seen very significant advancements. I think Europe can build on about 4 decades of environmental policies that have been hugely influential in setting the scene in the various member states of the European Union. I think it's fair to say that not a single European member state would have been this advanced in its environment and climate policies without the EU. And that's why we have cleaner water, cleaner air. We deal with our waste better. So we see a lot of advancements. Yeah. And I think in this day and age, when people are doubting collaboration between countries, it's important to emphasize that the EU is functioning at that level. Yeah. At the same time, and during the same time period, we see that we have not touched the fundamental unsustainability of our systems of production and consumption. Yeah. So we're dealing with some of the negative effects of that. But by now we understand that we really need to go to the core, and that is our energy system, our food system, the way in which we build, and the way in which we move from place A to B. and that we have put very much at the forefront of the work that we do, away from this belief that by making marginal tweaks in what is an existing system, an existing technology, we really need to move to what we call systemic transitions. We need systemic change. And that is not some radical statement. It is based on hard science and knowledge. And that's where I think we play a key role. We are part of the guardians in Europe of independent knowledge that is objective and that can bring to the table what works and what doesn't work, what the impact is on the environment. And that is needed to hold countries also accountable, because countries promise under EU law that they will do X, Y, and Z, but we need to make sure that they actually do, that they implement what they promise. And that's also what we do. And a third thing that I'm proud of is that for more than 25 years now, we have been connecting new insights in science and translate them in an understandable language to a policy-making community to make sure that new insights are really stimulating new policies that are more ambitious. And in that respect, we are, I think, a critical actor also in the current European Green Deal, and to underpin that with science and knowledge.
Yeah, it really is, like the points that you have made. I strongly agree with that. It's very important not just to think about, what are these little tiny things that we can do, which are easy, that are going to help us solve these problems. We really need to think on a much bigger and greater scale, because the issues we are facing are on a much bigger, greater scale. So the work that TA has done is really amazing. And, just having to educate politicians and tell them, hey guys, these are the things that science says, these are the new advancements in technology. You can have good policies, you can have policies that work in both economic and social manner as well. So really, I really commend you for what you have been doing, and it's really, really good stuff. But I would like to move over to Sophia as well. Sophia, as we have heard from you when I was introducing you, you have had quite a few years with all the things that you have been doing and all the organizations that you have been a part of. Could you share us, how do you view the current situation, and what are you most proud of your achievements in the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I've definitely noticed a change in the climate, in the social climate of how people have been talking about climate change. And I've definitely seen that even among my friends and family, people have taken me a lot more seriously over the past few years, especially as we've had leading people like Greta Thunberg really talking about how important it is to take climate change seriously. And then on a personal level, I guess what I'm really proud of is what I've been doing with my own nonprofit that I launched a little over 2 months ago. And so in 2 months, we have amassed over 5,500 volunteers with an average age of 16. And so they're working on translating climate information into over 105 languages. And so I really do think this is amazing, because we right now have about 3,000 pages of climate information that we have translated that is currently being proofread by our partners. And so that's what I'm most passionate about. It's really increasing access to environmental education, because I know I'm not a scientist yet. Obviously, I've just started my schooling journey. And so to be able to really participate in advocacy and just generally raise awareness and really make people understand that this is something that we need to act on, especially adults, and obviously starting from a young age and educating young children about the importance of climate change, so that they eventually go on and become environmental scientists, political scientists, and really become engaged in these processes, I think is something really important. And I'm super proud of the work that we're doing.
Sophia, I'm proud of you as well. This sounds great. Amazing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, the work that was done in the last 2 years by the youth movement, I really think that that's what has brought climate change to the front pages of mainstream media. I mean, it was discussed before, but there is something in the symbol of young people saying, we don't care about our education if we don't solve these issues first. And, really sending a message of importance of their future and how are they going to live on this planet. It's something that has really, made a big impact. Hans, Anna, how do you feel? Do you think that we're going to have more young people having, official institutionalized positions in some of your institutions, maybe to to help us be even more ambitious in our targets?
Yes, I think so. Yes, we saw the whole year of 2019 that so many young people worldwide went out on the street. I remember that in January 2019, there was that let's go, and Greta went every week. And in September, we go all out on the street. And it happened. It happened. In the end of the September, over 100 countries, and they were all out on the street with those same signs, so to say. So less meat, less heat, or there is no planet B. And you saw that everywhere. So you saw that there is a huge mindset shift going on amongst these young people, and they go together, which is very, very hopeful, so to say.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and congrats, Sophia, on the terrific work that you and so many others are doing. And yes, I do think it's influential. It sends a clear message, and I think there are also a bunch of objective reasons why it sends a clear message. First of all, I think that the coalition which you often see between the youngsters and the scientists is pretty clear. You know, scientists are actually saying, okay, this is a cry to put something on the agenda, but there is actually a rock solid scientific basis to do this. So that is important. The other thing is, of course, of a more ethical way, that is the next generations and what they are inheriting from us. And there is also a strong economic reason. I mean, with this corona crisis now, if we grow out of this crisis and we just throw money at the economy without taking fundamental sustainability into account, I mean, we will have to pay twice. We pay now and we pay later to clean up the damage. And we will no longer be me, because I will be probably retired for most of the time that we have to pay back. It's Sophia's generation that will have this hanging over them. So it's not smart economics, and ethically, it's pretty unacceptable to put a double whammy of costs on this next generation. So yeah, I think it's important. Will we do more outreach to youngsters? Yes, we have been doing that. Actually, I have connected to the Youth for Climate and Fridays for Future by giving talks and speaking to them and supporting them with the information that we have. We have presented our key major report on the state of the European environment and climate also to the youngsters in the youth parliament. So there is a conscious effort to do that. But I think it's necessary to make that connection even stronger. And Nemanja, when you said they may send the message, we don't care about our education, we need to solve this problem first. I would say if we want to solve the problem, that's one more reason to put the emphasis on education, because we're talking about the lawyers, the engineers, the politicians, the doctors that will have to solve these things together with us. Huh?
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. And, you know, I hope that all of these things which are happening, they're going to make these professions which are going to help us stop climate change and help solve the environmental issues to become cool. And to have, you know, young people want to go into this. They want to, you know, be a part of this great movement, which is solving the biggest issues that we have at hand. And, you know, if we manage all of us together to create a sort of a feeling that it's, you know, it's prestige to be a part of this movement, it's prestigious to solve these issues, I think that we're really going to have great results in the next years that are coming, and which we have, you know, it's already been spoken about a lot, really are crucial for how our planet is going to look like in the next 50 to 70 years. If nobody has anything else to add while we're on this topic, Hans, you gave me a pretty good opening to the next topic, which I wanted to discuss. That's basically the situation that we are in right now globally. The coronavirus pandemic has caught the whole world by surprise. In a very short time, everyone's life has just been turned upside down. And, you know, you could say rightfully so. For most people, the focus now is on preserving health, saving jobs. But at the same time, you really must not forget that the pressing issue of environment is really important for, you know, overall existence on the planet. We have seen some actions that want to bring environment into the focus. EU, for example, has really placed the European Green Deal into the heart of its economic recovery plan. In the United States, Democratic candidate Joe Biden recently had a speech where a lot of time was dedicated to build back better, and a lot of money is promised to be put and to be invested into creating new technologies that should help us solve climate change. There's little doubt that this next few years will be crucial. So I wanted to ask you, Hans, first. What do you think of plans that are currently in place that are tackling environmental and economic issues? And what, in your opinion, is the most important thing to do at this moment?
Well, I think that the European Green Deal is by far the most forward-looking, most ambitious, most integrated policy plan or policy bundle that the EU has ever put on the table. Becoming the first climate neutral continent, taking biodiversity serious, going for a circular economy, going to a zero pollution continent. I mean, all of those things are critical. And on top of that, the connection was made with social justice, which is also a first, and the connection was made with the financial system. Sustainable finance as an objective for a sector which we have largely left untouched in its core responsibility for sustainability. So, I mean, that has to make us optimistic. And those who were thinking that the corona crisis would push all of that off the table, that was not true. I mean, the political commitment that we hear from many member states and in the European Parliament is very clear. So that is good. Now, I'm not naive. I'm fact and knowledge driven. I know that if we want to bend the curves and the trends that we've seen for 50 years in a pivotal decade, and we are really in a pivotal decade, science is very clear about that, it will require drastic systemic change. And so we need to use the leverage of this European Green Deal to make investments that will bring us to 2030 as a stepping stone to 2050. And that's where I see the optimism in the policies. The realism is that this will be very difficult, that we will bump into actors that are fighting against this, that we are dealing with sectors that will maybe disappear or that will go through a major transition. And so we need to be conscious of that, take that into account when we are going for this type of direction. And if we can connect the idea that we are building not only the environment and the climate for the future, but the societies for the future with a functioning and fair economy and a functioning and fair system of distributing the benefits of that economy, I think that's the only way forward. And with all the questions and the criticism that some have, I think it's fair to say that Europe has never framed anything this ambitious and seems to be hanging on to it rather strongly, also in times of Corona. So that would be my framing for the future.
And what do you see as like the key element if this is going to be successful? What is the most important thing that needs to happen in order for us to see a successful European Green Deal?
Yeah, well, this may be a bit of a surprising answer, but I think we need to understand where the blockages are. What is stopping us from doing what we know we have to be doing, that we are capable of doing if we really want it? So we need to understand the lock-ins and the things that are blocking us. And we tend to focus a lot in the environment and climate community on giving examples of what works, and that's all fine. But I want to fundamentally understand what is holding us back from doing that, which is why the link with the financial system is so critical. The link with the fiscal system is critical. The link with big, almost monopolistic or oligopolistic players in the economy is so critical. So if we address that, I think we can find the keys to open those doors that are locked and then break through those. Yeah, I think that is absolutely critical.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Anna, you wanted to add something to this?
Yeah, I wanted to say support. So a green and just recovery is what we have to fight for. And then the Green Deal without compromises is absolutely a crucial part of it for the whole world. So it sounds like a European Green Deal, but this Green Deal is very important for the whole world. That's what I find important to add to as well, because then Europe sets an example, and then you can save a lot of environment.
Yeah, for sure. If Europe makes this work, and all of these economic packages, they're not going to be over in the next 1 or 2 years. This is going to last for quite some time. So if Europe can provide a good example, I really agree. It can really be like the guiding star for other countries, and to see that you can have both the economy and the environment and the social issues solved if you just take a holistic approach to it. But Anna, I also wanted to ask you, how do you view the current state when it comes to preservation of species and natural habitats? We often hear that we are in the 6th great extinction, and do you think that this corona pandemic is gonna help us move away from that, or how do you see this whole situation?
If you ask me this question in a little bit of a sad moment, then I start crying, because I look at our forests and I see that they are having such a hard time. There is a lot of illegal deforestation. And in this corona period that expanded, take the Amazon. It's a very important rainforest for our world and for our temperature, for rainwater, for oxygen, for biodiversity, for a lot of species, for people. And there has been a lot of illegal invasions. And that goes together with the political leader of Brazil. That doesn't help at all. So if you ask me these questions in a little bit more optimistic or radical hope, a day with radical hope, then I would say save the forests. We have to save all our forests. So we have to save the rainforest in the Amazon, in Congo, in Indonesia, but also the northern forests in Canada and in Russia, Siberia. And we have to make sure that they can regrow themselves, so that that living ecosystem with all those important species, that they can recover after drought or after rainfall. But we also have to plant trees massively, because that's what keeps our earth livable. And we're now entering a crucial phase, because we see now that Australia is burning, and then we will see that the Russian forests are burning, and then we see the United States, and then we see Australia again and Russia. So we go a whole year round with quite a harsh forest burning down calendar because of global warming, and because we take too much from the forest, and we don't let that forest recover itself. So if you ask me what should we focus on worldwide, is save the forest. Do what you can to let those trees grow and let them give us a livable earth.
But how do you see, how can we achieve that? Is working with local communities the key? Is, putting policies in place which will stop companies from deforesting forests? How do you see, what should we do right now?
But the first one is maybe the most unknown one, but working together with communities that live and work in the forest or close by the forest is crucial, because they know the forest. And to give a simple example is that the Amazon is burning, but the Amazon is not burning where there is a lot of people living and working in the forest. Where there's indigenous communities, those places are not burning. It's the places where there is large scale agricultural business going on. So yes, that's an important thing. And then there is the importance of power structures and huge economic gains, which we really should tear down and match to what is really needed.
Yeah, and recently there have also been studies which have shown that degradation of habitats it will not go slowly. Actually, when we reach certain tipping points, it actually quite dramatically decays. So this is also not just for climate change, but also for preservation of species. This next 10 years are probably very crucial. Sophia, I would like to move over to you a bit. What do you think of emission reduction targets which are currently set? And what do you think are the most important steps that we need to make now in order to uphold the Paris Agreement targets?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that we need to be more aggressive in the targets we're setting. And specifically, I'm just going to talk about the United States. So obviously, with the current president we have in office, almost nothing is being done. Actually, we're reversing all the progress we had made on everything climate change related. And so I really think what's super important here is voting. Like, everyone always asks me, what can I do? Should I go vegan? Like, should I start wearing sustainable clothing? And obviously, of course, I'm like, yes, like that helps a little bit, like, sure, do it. But the most important thing I always say is please just go out and vote for a climate friendly candidate. Please go vote in the general election for someone other than Trump. I mean, Joe Biden, we saw, just released his $2 trillion climate plan. And like we were talking about earlier, like a lot of what he's doing is he's linking the COVID crisis and how we need to really bounce back economically to climate change and making sure that it's really sustainable options that we're pursuing. Like, he's investing so much money in clean energy, in transportation, electricity, and he, like said previously, he's really tying a lot of this to environmental racism and really taking a social justice view on everything, which is obviously great. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think it depends, like, where you are in the world, where you're coming from. Sometimes a lot of this is also a matter of education. In the United States, we do still have a lot of climate deniers. Like, I think 30% of our population still doesn't really believe in climate change, which is absolutely horrible. And so that's where I personally am, like, working a lot. Obviously, environmental education is like my passion, and I feel like where I can be most influential, because ultimately all I really can say is please go out and vote. I mean, I just turned 18. I can finally vote. And so for so long I couldn't vote. And it felt a little hypocritical for me to say, it's the most important thing is to vote. But I also do say this for, like, younger kids as well. Like, if you can't go out and vote, like, directly, if you're too young, you can still advocate on behalf of politicians. You can help lobby for them, make phone calls. There's so much we can all do on a personal level. And it's really about taking initiative and making sure that every single person tries to play their part in, like, the grand scheme of things.
Can I come in here? I think what Sophia is saying is really important, because politics matter. Politics matter. They set standards. They hold people and companies accountable. They set the needle on the compass for where we are investing massive amounts of public money and connect them to private money. So I do think this is indeed very critical. I also fully agree that the current president, Trump, is actually actively deconstructing 40 years or 50 years of leading on environmental policies. A lot of the 1960s and 70s policies in the US were actually world leading. The Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, protection of endangered species, it was world leading. So the active deconstruction is actually disheartening, and I think ethically completely unacceptable. Yeah, and in addition to that, also something that Sophia mentioned, the idea of science and believing in climate change. And I've got a very brief anecdote there. I was asked by a European member of parliament whether I believed in climate change, and I immediately said no. And then I waited for a couple of seconds, and you could see other members of parliament looking at me like, what? The head of the European Environment Agency does not believe in climate change? And so I said after a couple of seconds, no, because it's not a belief system. It's science. Yeah. I don't need to believe in it. It is science. So we need to stand up for that. And I think that is a role that we can also play globally. Youngsters can play that role. Scientists play that role. And also our agency, which keeps transatlantic connections with knowledge institutions in the US open, and at lower levels also with the US EPA, because those are the partners that we will work with in the future. Yeah.
Anna, you wanted to add something as well?
I wanted to say, here. Yes, please go out and vote. And then there were those youngsters during the European election period that had those protest signs saying like, go out and vote for me, for my future, because I can't. And then they said green future, climate proof future. That was wonderful. And most of the countries have elections once in a while. So if you can, please have a look on which candidate is really going for climate action and then vote.
Yeah, I think we've touched on an important topic of, individual actions versus politics. And I think they really go hand in hand, because when you have individual actions which are showing that you care about the environment, you're also signaling to the politicians, you need to put this in your programs. So that way you can, have a feedback effect that brings more change. But I also wanted to ask you one more thing. You all touched upon that a little bit. And that's like belief in climate change and having trust in scientists. Here in Serbia, and I've heard in some other countries as well, during this whole crisis with COVID, it has happened that let's say, confidence in science seems to go down a bit. So how do you think that will translate going forward when it comes to climate change? Whoever would like to take this question.
That's really a shame, because science, and especially climate scientists, are organized worldwide very well. And they have such a huge pile of science. And you already mentioned that IPCC report, of which Hans knows everything, but that's really already for years and years a very organized community of scientists building upon each other and then reviewing it worldwide. So it's very hard to find something in that report which is not true, because it's science from all directions. So all aspects of climate, in the land nature, in the ocean, in the air, is all combined there. And it's very long-term science as well. Hans, I'm going to campaign for you now in your community, but it's really true. I mean, it's not science like, oh yeah, last year we discovered something. We have a little bit too much pollution in the air. Okay, let's throw something else in the air. Not at all. It's all 20, 30, 40, 50 years science. And then it's a combination of very small particle science and very large, how do I say it in a little bit normal language, large trends of weather, for example. And that whole pile is reviewed every 2 years. And really in 2019 was a very sad year, because the IPCC report and the biodiversity report, IPBES report, they both screamed out like, hey, this decade is now or never. So let's go for it. Massive transformation. And that means politicians that take great decisions, that mean companies that don't go for their own profit, but open up. And it means us. We can all go vegan or recycle and reuse whatever we want. Big steps, small steps, all fine.
Yeah, Sophia, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it honestly doesn't make that much sense to start doubting scientists during this time, because I really don't think they've been doing a poor job addressing the pandemic. This is not their fault. We've had scientists telling us for months, you need to wear a mask, you need to social distance, you need to stay home. It's not their fault that A, people aren't listening to them, and B, politicians are directly going against everything they're saying and giving us absolutely wrong advice, reopening things, just basically turning this into a public health crisis. The reason this is a public health crisis is not because of the scientists. The scientists have been telling us like everything right. Like they know what they're talking about. They've done the research. Like Dr. Fauci in the United States, like obviously knows what he's talking about, and he's giving the public legitimate like advice and legitimate knowledge. The problem is not the scientists here. The problem, like the same thing for climate change. The reason why we're not doing anything is not because of scientists. Obviously the scientists know what to do and they know what policy measures we need to be taking. But it's the fact that the politicians aren't willing to do anything about it is the reason why we have two crises now.
Yeah, if I can add to that, people like to get the best hospital care now. I mean, that is pretty apparent in all countries where the hospitals are filling up. What do they think this is based on? It's science. It's science. I mean, health science is very complex. It's done by engineers, by IT people, by doctors, by people running models, by statisticians. It's science. It's applied science. So if we see some parts of the population that disrespect scientists, just ask them whether they would be willing to give up their local hospital and doctor, because it's all based on science, right? The other thing is that we actually did systematic research on when scientists are putting up an early warning, to use the precautionary principle, to say, look, guys, we discovered this effect of a chemical or of something else on the environment or human health or climate. Take this seriously. We looked at dozens of case studies, and the conclusions are pretty clear. First of all, before scientific communities, not individuals, flag that up and bring it to the table, they've usually been through a thorough analysis and they know what they're talking about. And we did not find false positives. Sometimes the impacts were not as large as what they predicted, but they were not wrong. I mean, there are no false positives. In most cases, the impacts were larger than what they initially predicted. And the longer we waited in addressing the issues, the higher the price to society. Even irreversible damage was done. So I think we should take science much more seriously, and we should take early warnings more seriously and work on connecting the best science to the best policies in a more institutionalized fashion. And many countries have a good system for that, including the US and the EU, but we can still improve that system.
Yeah, for sure. And if one thing that this whole pandemic situation has done, it's kind of like a climate crisis, but fast forwarded. We see all those things. You need to act now. If you wait, everything becomes worse. So, we can just hope that when some time passes from this, when it stops being such an immediate threat to all of the people, and when everybody has the time to reflect on it with, a clear head, that we will see how important it is actually to listen to scientists and how much better lives we can lead if we just, have a more trust in what hard data and years of research are showing us. But this kind of brings us back to the last topic that I wanted to discuss with you. Another thing that this pandemic has done is it basically made all of us change the way we live our lives. And it seems to me that since it has occurred, we had more time for ourselves. We have been inside. We have not been going out as much. And we have had time to slow down a bit. And these times of great challenges can also bring about great change as well. So what I wanted to ask you, Sophia, first, but then other panelists as well. Do you think that we as a society can learn from this and change? And, do you see the personal development and personal growth has a big part in what we need to do in the next years?
So first on the topic of like personal growth and personal development, absolutely. I mean, I know I personally have been super productive during quarantine and I have made a lot of progress, like obviously with the UN appointing me to the Youth Advisory Board on climate change. Like, I mean, I'm going to be doing all the work virtually now. So there is a lot that we can be doing. And then in terms of like what we're doing with Climate Cardinals, everything we're doing is virtual. Like we have these 5,500 students who are all working together to translate climate information, and it's all done like online from the comfort of their homes. So this really is like a cultural reset, and it's time for people to like start focusing on priorities and like learning how to manage their time well. But I also think it's important to note like the way that the pandemic has altered our life is not a sustainable solution. I mean, we now have a plastic pandemic because of like all the single-use plastic that we're using because of COVID, which obviously, I mean, like we need to be using like single-term plastic sometimes because of like how this is a public health crisis. But obviously, like that's not what we're going to be doing in the future. And so while there are like certain lessons that we can take from this, we also need to, going forward, change a lot of things, like not just in the short term because of like what's happening, but we really need to, like as Hans was saying, like we need systematic widespread change that's really going to start with like our policymakers, with our governments actually listening to scientists and implementing the changes that they recommend.
Yeah, and Anna, how do you view all of this? Like, do you think that, as we've heard from Sophia, we have a plastic pandemic, but at the same time, we are traveling less. I think a lot of the people are trying to buy locally. I've also seen that the Google has said that the number of searches on how to live a more sustainable life has skyrocketed since the lockdown has started. So do you think that people are going to take something away from this and really change some of the habits for the better after the pandemic is over?
Yes. So yeah, you're already listing some things that people worked from home, stayed more at home. A holiday season is different from where there is a holiday season, of course, but in Europe there is at the moment. And then the local food and the less traveling for work as well. So yes, this period is definitely going to leave something behind. And I would say a positive advice is like list the positive things, put them somewhere in your diary or at the wall or wallpaper so that you can look at them when things change again. But there's also a huge downside, I would say. Let's see, what we're talking about today is about the planet and the earth, but we do it on the invitation of the Exit Festival. And that's cancelled because of this whole situation. So there's no music festival connecting people. It would be way more better if we would have had this panel during the festival with music, with people meeting each other, having the opportunity to talk about it, to go after this panel for a vegan burger and have a nice local beer. And that's not possible. So there's a huge downside of not being able to connect face to face and doing it in your work or in school or with music and dancing, because that's so important also. We are all human beings, so we need to have that flow and the feeling towards each other. But also, if you want to stay positive and you want to save the planet, so to say, because we need this whole decade hardworking, dedicated people to do so.
But yeah, Hans, go ahead.
Yeah, I will not repeat what is said. I think it's clear that in the last 5 months, we've been going through the largest involuntary experiment of organizing our work and our lives differently. And I think we will learn a lot from that. We will learn what works. Some things will stay, but we also learned what doesn't work. And I think what Anna referred to is very important. You can maintain social cohesion and capital for a while through these means, but building it and keeping it vibrant and the exchange, the personal interaction, I can only hope that we can go back to that, because that is the sort of thing that I'm missing. And I've been working from my home office for almost 5 months now myself. So I would like to add something else. I think a fundamental question which we are now asking, at least in some parts of society, is the question of resilience. Yeah, I know it's an in vogue word, but it's a word that has a solid scientific foundation as well. What is our societal resilience? How do you organize resilience in interdependent and high vulnerability world that is based on global production and consumption chains, some of which make a lot of sense, some of which, in my opinion, are rather nonsensical. And how do you link that to resilience on a limited planet? Because some people say, yes, it will be Earth Overshoot Day, and we use 1.56 planets. I'm sorry, this is complete intellectual nonsense. There is no 0.56 planet. We are using the one planet that we have. And so we are depleting it, destroying it, we are polluting it, overusing it. And the 0.56 is rather an indication of the speed at which we are doing that, because there is no 0.6 planet out there. Yeah. And I think that fundamental question of how do we relate to the ecosystems and to a climate system that is screaming at us, stop your business as usual. The Earth system is telling us business as usual is over. Yeah. So coming with business as usual recipes has no future. It has no positive future. We need to step away from that. And what I'm noticing is that quite a few people are trying to connect these complex things and understand how they hang together and have a serious debate on how the adaptability that we've shown over the last 5 months can have at least some positive spillover effects or some reflections that we can use for the next decade, which is so important for the planet.
Do you think that, with all that has happened, are people starting to reprioritize the things that they find important in their lives? Like, obviously, in most of the countries, you can no longer go out to the coffee place. It's all limited. You don't have festivals. You cannot really travel that much abroad. And you're looking inwards, and you're looking actually to the nature. You're going to the mountains. You're going to lakes in your own home countries. Do you think that will make people realize how actually important it is to save all of those things, so that their kids and their grandkids can also enjoy them like they can enjoy them now? Sophia, we can start with you, and then if somebody else also has something to add.
That's honestly such an interesting observation, and that actually made me think. Definitely a lot of my friends, obviously, we can't really hang out together or anything like that. I haven't seen some of my friends in months. And I have noticed that what a lot of people have been doing is, you're going to the park, you're social distancing at the park, you're going and, hiking in the mountains, stuff like that. And I definitely do think that is something positive, because I feel like people are getting more in touch with nature. Too often, in the society we live in, it's really easy to just stick to the city, go out and only go out to lunch. But for people to be really reconnecting with nature and realizing, hey, if we don't clean up our act, those parks that you're going and hiking at, in 20, 30 years, they could be absolutely destroyed and polluted. And so it's if you want to continue these traditions, if you want to continue to go out and have a beautiful natural park that you want to hike in, then you really need to take climate change and environmental destruction seriously. And so I do think that's a small positive thing. And it's about shifting people's mindsets. If they realize that, you have to give some to get some, you can't have it both ways. If you really want to address this crisis and fix it, then yeah, we're going to have to spend a lot of money on the solution. But like Hans was saying previously, we're going to have to spend this money at some point anyway. So we might as well do it now before it really is too late and things become irreversible. And also because it's going to be double the amount in the future.
Yeah. And also, Anna, you were telling us previously that you also are working and getting in touch with nature with your own home. That you have a farm, and that a lot of people are actually showing up to see what it is that you are doing. How do you view those situations?
Yes, so it's a small old farmhouse in a small forest, and everybody's welcome here. And we're now restoring it eco-friendly and take care of the forest, which is having a hard time because also in the Netherlands it has been dry for many, many months. So I hope the forest will survive. But those are the small, beautiful things. And I think, yes, a lot will stay and the mindset shift is happening. But I'm also a little bit afraid that there is such strong dynamics that still we're waiting to getting back to normal. And then poof, everything explodes again. And we all go to see the last species over there and the last piece of forest over there. And that would not be good. So if we stay a little bit more relaxed and conscious and not in that completely over society, that would be the best takeout for us as the people. And then we vote consciously, and everyone who can influence during their school period, student period, or work period in a sustainable way, you should do it.
Yeah, building on this, there is actually some evidence that as countries grow out of the measures, that immediately you see the monitored data on air quality and on emissions and on picking up again. So it says that we are thinking and reflecting, and some of us are probably changing, but the core dynamics of our economic and social system we have not touched in many ways. So going to those fundamental changes, I think, is absolutely critical. And for me to connect it to Sophia's movement also, one of the youngsters asked me when I was speaking to them, so when did you start negotiating climate change? And I said, well, actually in 1990, yeah, that's when we started to negotiate the UNFCCC, the Framework Convention on Climate Change. So it's now 30 years later. And what has been the result of that? Well, about 65% more emissions. Yeah. And then this person looked at me and said, is that the case? I said, yeah, that is the case. And she said, is that the best you could do? And then you can start to rationalize and intellectualize and say, well, Europe has stick to its commitments under Kyoto, and we've done this and that. But the harsh reality is that after 30 years of negotiating climate change, we have not managed to bend the curve. Yeah, we haven't. And we will have to do that. And at a global level, this will have to go together with development and social development, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. We had them in 1992. It was called Agenda 21. And the trend lines of unsustainability have continued. So the key question is, what are we going to do radically different in the next decade, which apparently we haven't done in the previous 28 years. Yeah? Although we had very similar goals and very similar lofty words and objectives out there. And that, I think, is the core reflection that we have to make. And if some of us reflect on our personal values and lifestyles, that's fine. I'm all for it. But the key drivers of the systems that we are up against, for me, is what we have to address.
That's the food on your plate, no?
Yeah, amongst other things. And that's the traveling I do, and that's the clothes I buy, and it's the building I live in, and it's life. It's life.
Yes, well, I'm not sure if how are we actually going to do that, but I can offer what has happened in Serbia recently. In Serbia, we have a big air quality problem, and actually that issue has been around for a long time. It's nothing recent, but only last winter did the public really cry out. And how I've seen why has that happened is because a lot of people were looking at the air quality apps. There it's pretty obvious, it's pretty clear. You have like a little icon and it says air is hazardous or air is very polluted. And you just have one number, you have one color, and people are, it's clear to them, they can see it. And they started sharing it through social media like crazy. And we actually had some reactions which we didn't really have in our own country on the environment for quite some time. It's still not the best as is the case in the world as well. But, I think maybe it's a starting stepping stone, just to have people see it in a clearest, most easy way, just like this is happening and this is what we must do in order to stop it. Would anybody have any more thoughts to reflect on what we have been speaking about during the past hour?
Well, thank you. And what you're now giving as an example is making things visible helps then Talk about it. Just raise your voice like Sophia does. Helps as well. And stay radical in your hope. That will be my last words. And then, Sophia, maybe you can add something.
Sure. I mean, well, first, thank you so much for giving us a platform to really share our ideas and our values. I really think that's important. We need to keep these conversations going, especially during these hard times. I know it's really easy to lose hope. And I mean, with the coronavirus crisis, it's been really easy to put climate change on the back burner, but we really need to realize this needs to be something that's always on the forefront of our minds. We need to really aggressively tackle this crisis. And of course, it's important to listen to the youth. It's important to listen to anyone really who is raising their voices. And so, yeah, we really need to take this seriously.
Yeah, all I can say is thanks, Nemanja, for having the debate. And I'd like to say to Sophia as well, keep us accountable, keep asking questions, keep putting pressure on the system. We need it. So happy to listen to you as well.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Hans, very much. I think that we have heard many great things during the past hour and many inspirational things that will hopefully inspire people that were listening to start doing some things in their own local communities and, start bringing about the change that we really need to have. Thank you, everybody that were listening, that have tuned in with us for the past hour. I hope that you had a good time and that you found it interesting. Lastly, thank you to Exit for bringing all of us together and for hosting this panel. I really hope that, next year we will be able to come to the festival, as Anna said, maybe have a similar debate with even more optimism, and later on, have a drink and enjoy the music. And one note which I wanted to close this upon is, we must not forget as a society that environmental problems, it's not only about stopping things and preventing bad things from happening. It's also about bringing about change that will really create a better society, a healthier society, a more just society. And we need to keep that in mind as well and have that be the driving force for our actions. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you again to the panelists, and see you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.